Welcome to our very first episode previewing an event that will bring the world together, that all the most popular people will be at. That is surely going to be the event of the century. It is our preview of the Fire Festival. I mean the World Cup. This is the ArsenalVision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot, speaking of Blackman Twitter, Yankee Gunner. That's right, the Fire Festival. The World Cup, I keep getting those two confused. If you have seen any of the images going around of some of the accommodations for people staying there, it does have a big Fire Festival vibe. But I think this hopefully will go differently for the people who are making their way there. It is really, really strange to be talking World Cup right now because I'm still thinking about Arsenal being top of the table. I'm still thinking about whether we're going to add Mudryk. I'm still thinking about whether we're going to add Danilo. I'm still thinking about what we're going to do to stay ahead of Manchester City. But at least for the next 6 weeks, the most important thing that we're going to be talking about is the World Cup. And so this is our tournament preview, the World Cup Daily. Now, what you will be seeing in the coming days as the tournament kicks off is a daily episode appearing on this feed that will be called World Cup Daily. It's still ArsenalVision podcast, but it's about the World Cup, and it may not feature any of the ArsenalVision people. So it's exactly like an ArsenalVision podcast, just with a different title, different topic, and different people involved. That should be very straightforward. If you didn't follow that, I don't know how to help you. I do want to congratulate Tim Stillman, by the way, who won for Best Women's Football Content Creator at the Football Content Awards, and Jessica Black, who won Best New Content Creator, by the way. Big fan of Jess here, of course. So with that, oh, by the way, we took third place. Now, look, it guarantees us another year of Champions League podcasting. So that's great. It's not what we wanted, but it's a step in the process, TM. And the more important thing, joking aside, is that the only reason we made it that far is because of a really overwhelming amount of response and votes from you, from people who listen. And in fact, it was more than we received last year when we won it. So I think there may have been some shenanigans going on. I'm calling shenanigans similar to maybe how Qatar got the World Cup, in fact. But the thing is that I do want to say thank you. It means the world to us that you would have given us that vote. So with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead. We're going to preview the whole tournament today. We're still going to do Arsenal stuff on Patreon tomorrow. There'll be a Mudryk and Danilo scouting video, so you don't want to miss that because it'll be the last time we are ever linked to those players. That's how the jinx works. Here with me now, the men who are going to be taking you through the World Cup, the men who actually have information about the players, the teams, and the World Cup, because I don't, is Phil Costa. You can find him on Twitter at _Phil Costa. Hello, Phil.
Hello, Elliot. We're back.
Back.
What is it, 1.5 years on, 18 months on, we're back. With an extra body. With an extra body. And the man who appreciates being called an extra body, it's what he's putting on his resume or his headstone, we'll see, is Lewis Ambrose. You can find him on Twitter at LG Ambrose. Hello, Lewis.
I've been called so much worse, and I've been called worse by both of you, I think, at various points. So I'll take it.
I can see the obituary now. Lewis Ambrose, sometimes known as the extra body, lived his life. We don't have to think about that for a long time, Lewis. Actually, although you do have a skull and crossbones on your hoodie, so maybe you know something we don't.
Foreshadowing.
It is painful foreshadowing. The good news, by the way, Phil, you'll like this, and people who didn't listen to the Euro Daily, that music is coming back, starting with the daily episodes.
Hook it into my veins directly.
It is a banger. 1980s synth music banger. You're going to love it. I think that's what the kids say anyway. All right. Let's kick this off just with quick global thoughts here, okay? So, Phil, we're going to go group by group. But as we head into this World Cup, what's your global thought? Not necessarily about why are we doing this? Why are we doing this here? Why are we doing this now? But just in terms of what you expect from the tournament, there's been some big news of players having to pull out, obviously, like Nkunku. Ivan Toney didn't get called up because, as it turns out, Ivan Toney has a bet on England losing the first game. I'm kidding, but I'm not kidding. 232 bets, 33 bets, something like that he made. Little sad, actually. Sounds almost like an addiction, so I'll have to see what that is. So there, I've just turned a joke into a very serious matter, and I apologize. Okay, Phil, please rescue me. What are your global overview thoughts of the World Cup coming in just a few days now?
I mean, it is very strange, isn't it? It's the first time any of us have ever had to deal with or watch or experience anything like this. And, you know, the obvious reasons are the obvious reasons. And it's no secret or surprise that the FIFA documentary on Netflix has been rather aptly timed with the kind of the in sync with this World Cup. So look, I mean, ultimately, there's a lot to consider here as a general fan, as a fan of football. Your morals come into play, your ethics. But at the end of the day, football fans should not be robbed of this footballing experience. And there's a lot to consider that has been spoken about, that will continue to be spoken about, that needs to be spoken about. But, hopefully here in this podcast, we can kind of take it for what it is, football, 1 month of football, and hopefully we can give some people some information that they wouldn't normally know.
Yeah, I mean, I want to enjoy the tournament, and I want to enjoy the tournament as a fan of football. I will also be very engaged psychologically and emotionally in the other issues around the tournament that I have problems with. And one of the things that I think has been so hard in the social media era, not to make it too serious, but social media has created a dynamic where it's never okay to point out that anything is problematic or bad, because there's always the ability to point out that something else is also problematic or bad. And so I realize I live in a country that if you make any accusations or questions about the ethics or morality of something happening in another country, people are going to point to the country I live in and say, well, what about these things your country has done? And how could I not acknowledge that my country has indeed done those things? That I don't feel responsible for them, but they have been done. But the problem with that is it means you can never point to anything and say that that thing is bad, because there's always the ability for fingers to be pointing back at you and saying, but what about these things that are also bad? And I hate that, because it makes it easier for bad things to exist as long as there are people who will be willing to give them cover by pointing to other bad things. You can never get your hands around the topic you're trying to stay focused on, right? So whether that's the rights of LGBTQIA plus people in certain parts of the world or migrant workers, people can say, well, what about the issues with how certain communities are dealt with in this country, or what you've done in foreign wars? All of it's right. But if all of it's right and we never can focus on any of it, we can never make progress on any of it. So it is tricky. And I think that as a football lover, I am going to enjoy the tournament, and I feel for everybody that feels conflicted about this. And I would be lying if I said, I know the right way to approach that. I don't. It's super complicated, and our lives are so intertwined with so many questionable things that exist in our society today. I don't know how to disentangle them. So I hope that people don't take the attempt to enjoy this tournament for a lack of consideration about the issues surrounding this tournament. I hope, Lewis, that I've said that in a way that makes some modicum of sense. And I'm curious, if you find yourself able to enjoy this at all, because the funny thing is the person in me that likes to think of myself as ethically upright recognizes that enjoying this tournament requires me to set aside some serious ethical concerns. And then there's the part of me that's just an Arsenal fan that's like, I don't want to think about World Cup right now. I want to think about being top of the table. So all of that conspires to make this a tricky tournament to approach intellectually or psychologically or emotionally,
Yeah, the mid-season calendar of the World Cup just adds to the weirdness, the strange feeling around all of it. I wouldn't disagree with anything you said. I feel really uneasy. You say you're going to enjoy the tournament, and it's football, it's a World Cup. I love World Cups. I'm not a huge fan of international football, but I love tournaments.
Same. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to enjoy it, or how much I'm going to enjoy it, how much I'm going to be able to enjoy it, because of everything surrounded the situation in Qatar, because of the winter, scheduling, kind of all of that. And yeah, I don't judge anyone who gets really into it and wants to watch all of it and go crazy. And I also
wants to listen to a World Cup Daily. Don't forget that.
For example. I also really definitely don't judge anybody and actually admire anyone who's like, yeah, I'm not watching it. And I'm completely taking a step away from this. I'm a bit jealous of people who are able to do that, because personally and also professionally, I'm not. So hats off to people who are doing that. And yeah, this is for me, I guess, a bit of a thought experiment. Like, I'm going to go into the World Cup and see how I feel about watching the football as it's going on and as it's all unfolding. I don't think I'll get into it the same way that I usually get into these tournaments, but I mean, it's still World Cup. I'm still going to sit at home and watch all the games. And yeah, and then I think it's just important at the same time to always be shining a light on the issues that exist in Qatar at the same time, and not watch it and basically ignore them and let the sports washing just commence.
Yeah, and to shine that light without feeling the need to solve every problem in the world.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you said at the top, you're never going to get anywhere or make any progress in anything if the response to saying something is bad is to point out something else that's bad. Like you can say that two things are bad, but one of them is really, really bad, and we would like that to be different.
And maybe it'd be a good legacy of the World Cup if every nation the World Cup existed in was a chance for that nation's challenges, problems, ethical concerns, criminality, whatever it is, had a light shone on it, right? And so it becomes a disinfectant. Light is the best disinfectant.
And these things don't reflect the people as well. They don't reflect the players. They don't reflect. I mean, we've got here me and Phil, obviously English, and you're American, and England and America are in the same group, and they're also in that group with Iran. Mm-hmm. And you've got the Iranian team with the fight for women's rights in their country at the moment. Mm-hmm. The Iranian team refusing to sing the national anthem. So it's like these things that are happening in these countries are not a reflection necessarily on the people or the people that are representing the countries either.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I think football has to be really careful, and by football I mean FIFA, I mean UEFA, I mean the Premier League, I mean all of it, because scarcity is important. Before I ever fell in love with football, when I was much younger, the sport that I was most focused on was NFL, was American football. And the thing that made it, I think, addictive to me at the time is from February to August, there was none of it. There was none of it. And when it came back, as it started to get closer, the sense that it was returning, the excitement that was returning. And oh, by the way, back then, I mean, they've kind of ruined their scarcity somewhat now, but all the games were Sunday and there was one on Monday. And that was it. You got one big day of games on the weekend, and then you had to wait the 7 days, for more. And there was this scarcity that created eventized the sport being available to you. You don't go 3 days without a football match of consequence these days. And now there's a tournament midseason. And oh, by the way, we never got to miss football before the World Cup kicks off. And we're not going to get to think about who lifted the World Cup before we're already talking Boxing Day games. So this World Cup is going to happen, and blink, you're going to miss it. And it's going to be like it never happened. And I do think that if you take scarcity away, that sort of takes scarcity away, you get it, then you don't allow people to need the football, to want the football. And you get pretty close to that Mitchell and Webb look sketch of, well, the football's happening all the time. All the football, watch it. It never ends. The football is always going on. If you can find that sketch, you should find it. It is hilarious, but apt. Okay. I think that's enough throat clearing and preamble. We all know where we are in the season. We all know where we are geopolitically. We all know what's going on in the world. You're here for Arsenal. We're not going to give you that. We're going to give you the World Cup instead. So you're here for the World Cup tournament preview, and now we can properly kick it off. Phil, let's go group by group. And I have 2 young children, so you are going to be super impressed. I know all of the letters in order in the alphabet, and I am aware that the first one is A, Qatar, Ecuador, Senegal, and the Netherlands. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Senegal and the Netherlands are strong favorites, but Sadio Mane will miss, I think, at least a game or 2 in this tournament. Why don't you kick us off with who of Group A?
Yeah, I mean, like you said there, Qatar, Ecuador, Senegal, the Netherlands. I think naturally Netherlands will be the favourites. I mean, they've kind of got a painful recent history with the World Cup, but ultimately they're one of the most iconic sides to ever play in this competition. And, with Louis van Gaal, they're fun. He's fun. They're quite fun. They've got a lot of good players. And I think they'll be looking to make a statement, especially because, you look through the spine and you can see 2 giants in defence in Matthijs de Ligt, Virgil van Dijk, and then you've got quality sprinkled elsewhere, with Frenkie de Jong, Memphis Depay, Denzel Dumfries managed to escape an injury scare late on. So, look, I think in the Euros, they also gave a good account of themselves. Whether or not they can replicate that form, I don't know. But they were strong in qualifying. And like I said, some fun players. I mean, Arsenal fans will be no strangers to Cody Gakpo and Xavi Simons, who, particularly in the away leg against PSV, really performed well and impressed. So, I'm quite looking forward to seeing them. I think it's a fun group, but they're my favourites in general. Although I've got a little sweet spot for Ecuador. I don't know if Lewis has any other highlights.
Before we move on to one other question about that group, Lewis, could this be the Cody Gakpo World Cup? Obviously a player that Arsenal were linked with. We did a scouting video of him on the Patreon, so obviously that's not why we didn't sign him. But a player that we got to look at in our Europa League group stage. I don't think he necessarily gets to shine quite as much as he's capable of. He had little moments. Could he be a player who has a lot to show in a group that maybe gives him a platform to announce himself?
Yeah, I think a group that gives him a platform and a team as well, and a manager, because we all remember watching Man United's Van Gaal, Van Gaal's Man United rather.
Breathtaking, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's something that Tim Stillman said a lot about when we were really bad under Mikel Arteta, and it was like everything was organised and slow and intricate, and you needed players to break out of that to create things. And I think that's what Cody Gakpo is, or is going to be for the Netherlands this next few weeks. Is the player that sort of breaks free from Van Gaal's shackles and adds a little bit of directness and pace and verticality to the team. So yeah, he's probably the player who, him and Memphis Depay, I think if they play well, then the Dutch will be fine. And if they don't play well, then there could be in big trouble.
Yeah, that sounds about right. One more thing in this group, Lewis. They always say the tournament loses something when the hosts go out. It may lose something early.
Oh, what a shame.
It may lose something early this time. 1-2, drew 3, lost 5, minus 15 goal difference in qualifying. They're obviously going to get to be through as the hosts. Any expectation of Qatar making this interesting, surprising? I mean, I don't know how much home support. I don't know what home support's going to look like or feel like in this World Cup. Presumably, it will still be somewhat intense, I would imagine. No reason why it wouldn't be any more than anywhere else. But any sense that they could surprise? Because I'm curious how the hosts going out early would impact this tournament.
The first thing I think to touch on is what you said about the home support. Like, I have no idea as well what that's going to look like. But I've watched Qatar, I've watched Qatar once in a tournament when they were invited to a Copa America a few years ago, and I expected absolutely nothing. And then they turned out to be pretty good and gave a few teams a scare in that tournament. I don't think a great amount of that team sort of survived and still there today, but I'm sure that they will not go down without a fight. Even as World Cup hosts, that boost that gives you, I think the adrenaline, the mood in the camp, the stadium's cheering for you. On the one hand, I have no idea what it's like to be in a stadium watching Qatar. On the other hand, I think every other nation will have a lot fewer fans than they would at a regular World Cup. So they could play into their hands, and they play Ecuador in the opener on Sunday. It's probably the weakest opposition in the group, and who knows, if they win the first game, you've only got to win one more game or get a couple of points from the other two games and you'll go through. So yeah, it's such a short group stage, unlike maybe like the Champions League where you play everyone twice, does open itself up for surprises, and you only really need one result to go through generally.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Okay, so Group B may have a bit of interest to our listeners. Group B has Iran and Wales. There are a couple other teams in it, but I can't find them right now. No, I'm kidding. It's England and USA, obviously. I think the expectation for this would be that England should breeze through this group. I'm sure that will be the expectation in England. The USA, I can tell you as a casual watcher, not been super impressive under Greg Berhalter. A lot of pressure on his job, much in the same way there is for Southgate. But I think Southgate can at least say, hey, I got to a major tournament final. On his resume, the USA, there's been questions about who should be picked. There's been questions about a lot of things. Now, I will say I think the USA has a really impressive array of young talent to call on, which is maybe why there's the frustration with Berhalter that there is. We've seen some of those players in the Premier League. Obviously, Pulisic not playing as much as he might like or Berhalter might like. Aronson's been one of the players of the season in the Premier League to some extent. Really impressive. Tyler Adams as well. Musa and McKennie are in there. There's Gio Reyna. So there's a lot of young talent. Matty Turner, well known to Arsenal fans, but a team that doesn't look like it has itself all figured out, and England just has so much talent to bring to bear. The question is going to be whether both those teams can get past Wales and Iran. a Wales team, obviously, that was once led by Ramsey and Bale. It's going to be a little bit different now. Lewis, I'll let you start this one so you don't have to clean up the crumbs that Phil leaves behind. But does this group come down to the game between USA and England in your mind, which, by the way, is being played in America on Black Friday? So discounts everywhere. You can get those bargains like a crappy television that's been marked down to an even lower price. You can go into a Walmart and fight. Do you think Americans will stop fighting each other in Walmarts long enough to observe this crunch fixture?
Yeah, to celebrate the greatest American victory against the English in centuries. I'm
Do we have another victory? I struggled with. Oh yes, that's right, 1776 roughly.
Yeah, there was one that I think mattered that stands quite out a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do not have, full disclosure, I don't really care about England and how England do. So this is not me speaking as an England fan.
Why do you hate Bukayo Saka and Ben White and Aaron Ramsey?
No, I hate the English people who hate them.
Got it, okay. Got it.
Tottenham fans, basically.
Basically.
I think Gareth Southgate is really poor. I think England probably on paper have pretty much the most talented team in the world, or squad in the world, and he cannot put them out in a way in recent months that either keeps clean sheets or scores any goals. So the form has been hideous preparing for the tournament. I think it's 6 games without winning. I think they didn't score in 4 or 5 of those. They only kept a clean sheet in one of them. It's not good. And I think when Southgate has a big problem, that he just leans into conservatism when things are going badly. He digs deeper and deeper into that. As an Arsenal fan, I think we'll see Bukayo Saka probably playing as a left wing back, which I'm sure will make many people's heads explode as they wonder what the hell Southgate's doing. I'm sure we'll see lots of Harry Maguire.
I hope so. He's entertainment.
So I think England have the team to go and win the tournament, but I don't think Southgate's got close to figuring out how to put them out in a way to win the tournament. And to be honest, I think there are groups with like one really weak team. I don't think this group has one. I think Wales they've shocked people at 2 of the last 3 major tournaments. I could see Wales causing another surprise or 2. I think Bale and Ramsey, we all know about their quality. Kiefer Moore's been great in the Premier League this season, but was also great at the Euros for Wales as well, as a big target man who, I guess Sam Vokes used to do that job, will just allow Bale and Ramsey to just drift around him and find space. So I think that could be a tricky game. I think the USA game could be a tricky one for England. And going in cold for the game against Iran, that looks like a potential banana skin as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see any team, like England and the US are the favourites, but I wouldn't be surprised to see any team make it out of this group.
Interesting. Yeah, I can't look past England at least getting out of the group. As bad as I think Southgate is, and I'm not a big fan of Southgate, I just can't see it. Phil, let me ask you just one question on the England squad, because I need to get my head around this. I really believe Jadon Sancho is a tremendously talented player, but he is determined to prove me wrong. He has been so bad at United. And I can't decide if it's a United thing or it's a Jadon Sancho thing. The kid put up numbers that are just outrageous at Dortmund, and he hasn't been picked for England. His career looks like it's just disintegrating before our eyes. Still very young. Can you tell me a little bit, just like super quick, is Jadon Sancho maybe not good? Because I just assumed I loved watching him at Dortmund, candidly. Like, I thought he was brilliant, a fantastic dribbler, had the killer pass, could score a goal. Like, what happened to Jadon Sancho? Is it just he's not good?
I mean, probably Lewis is the one to answer this question, to be fair, having watched him for 3 years. But, one major caveat is the Bundesliga. That's, there's a lot of space in the way that this league plays.
Werner,
in general,
Havertz, Sancho, you name it.
Both in behind and in so-called air quote crowded areas. I still think compared to the Premier League, they get a lot of space, which is, like you said, we've seen some players not be able to translate that form over into England. Physically, I think he lacks a burst to really get away from defenders in England. I don't think United have known where to put him. He's been on the left sometimes, he's been on the right, he's been kind of as the number 10 playing off the striker. And the move to me didn't seem like a well thought out one from either side. And it just felt like they both wanted the moment and the signing and the clamour that came with it, but not much thought was put beyond that. And I just think he's lost. He's a bit lost, and it's a shame because he is a wonderful player. But at the moment, he's one of many in an England sort of selection pool, and frankly, he didn't deserve to be on this list.
Yeah, Lewis, I don't want to shut you out of that. It's not fair. You watched him so much. So just in 30 seconds or less, why is Jadon Sancho bad now?
Partly, I think what Phil said, the sort of explosiveness isn't there. If you look at us and look at Martinelli and Saka playing in those positions, I think he lacks a bit of that. And I also think he needs to, or he's best when he's the hub of a team, or the hub of an attack. And you've got a wing back flying outside him. I think you watch Arsenal and the hub of the attack is quite obviously Martin Odegaard. And he turned up at Manchester United where Bruno Fernandes was there, and then Bruno Fernandes has the ball, or doesn't have the ball, but wants to receive the ball, and he's pointing to Jadon Sancho, telling him to get out of his way to give him more space, and Sancho can't sort of drift and play where he wants to play, and I think that's his biggest problem. Without a coach like Guardiola with Grealish at City, for example, who can not use him as that hub, but then still use him in a way where he gets plenty out of him.
I mean, like, if you put Jadon Sancho in the Xhaka role at Arsenal, would he suddenly look like a player, or is it just that he's not as good as we thought?
I think it's probably a mixture. All of Jadon Sancho's best form came with a really aggressive, offensive fullback outside him, or a fullback who would go either Guerrero on the left, Hakimi on the right, a fullback who would go inside or outside, and really attack-minded, really super technical players that he could combine with. And at Man United, he's played mostly with Aaron Wan-Bissaka on the right or Luke Shaw on the left, and it just really hasn't come together. Yeah, like Phil said, he's not like, you can't. It's weird, like he wasn't named in the England squad, and nobody even mentioned it because it just wasn't a surprise to anyone at all. He's been so poor for the last year or two. Yeah, interesting. All right, well, so Phil, on Group A, we'll stay here just a second longer because obviously there's some intense interest, I would suspect. Let's talk the Arsenal players between Ramsdale, White, and Saka. What's your expectation for playing time? I think Saka, under Southgate, has been a nailed-on starter, but whether or not he's a nailed-on starter now remains to be seen in terms of the system, and do we want, is he going to play wing-back? Is he suited for it? I think White and Ramsdale, something would have to happen for them to get in the team. You see it the same way?
Yeah, completely. I think Saka will start, whether it's left wing-back or right wing. I think he's probably the best option in both positions. And that's just not me saying that as an Arsenal fan. I genuinely think Southgate likes him, and we don't really have anybody else in the squad like Saka who can do everything. So I think he's kind of a unicorn in that sense. But unfortunately, I think Southgate's pretty wedded to Jordan Pickford in goal, even though he's made some errors of late. And even if Kyle Walker doesn't play the first game, I still don't think Ben White will get a look in because he'll probably play John Stones. I mean, I don't know why he's brought both Eric Dyer and Harry Maguire, plus Connor Cody. I mean, they all play in the middle of that three. So maybe there is a window for Ben White, but I just think something will have to happen, i.e. an injury or someone having a terrible, terrible game.
Do you think it's a bit ridiculous, like what the goalkeeper situation is for England? Because the goalkeeper with the most clean sheets and the best goals against record in the league for the team that's at the top of the league seems to be basically third choice behind Pickford, who's just a mess. Pope is good. I think he's good. But like the guys that face more shots always seem good. The other thing I will say is, like, you just can't play modern football with a keeper that can't play with the ball at his feet. Now, maybe England are not going to play that way as much. God knows with Maguire back there, you don't want the ball at people's feet, but like Ramsdale can help you get out, help you progress the ball, help you build from the back. And against teams, especially like low possession teams like Iran and Wales, and you need to get the ball up the pitch. It just strikes me as strange that everybody's just accepted that Pickford gets to be the guy, and Ramsdale, who's sitting there saying, fewest goals, and I get the fewest goals allowed thing is not because of Ramsdale per se, but certainly the ball progression components have a lot to do with him. Do you find that situation odd? Because from the outside looking in, I find it strange.
Kind of, but I first of all, I think Jordan Pickford is much more capable with the ball at his feet than Nick Pope. That's for sure. I think Nick Pope's a bit, you know when you put like 3 kids in a jacket and they're all like stumbling all over each other. I think that's what Nick Pope looks like. But I don't think his form's been great recently at club level. But at the end, it just goes down to trust, and having been in that, this situation before, high intensity, high pressure World Cup. He's had him in the Euros. Southgate used him in the penalty shootout against Colombia at the World Cup. I just think he's tried and tested, and, he hasn't done anything bad enough to lose his place, but it's a very weird situation, the goalkeeper. And I do think Ramsdale's a little bit unlucky, but he's in the thinking, and that's a positive step, I think.
Yeah. His biggest problem is just timing. Like, goalkeeper often feels like it's kind of a case of who gets there first. And like Phil said, Pickford hasn't had any hideous moments. And then it's really hard to drop a goalkeeper, because if you drop them and then someone gets injured and you need to bring them back in, the faith in the player, the trust in the player to perform has kind of been lost. Compared to other positions where you just sort of naturally rotate and maybe get the chance to win your place. You don't really have the chance to do it the same way in goal.
Yeah, I think that is fair. But this is where I think a manager just has like international managers, they can't be master tacticians, right? They just basically say, hey, we're going to go 4-3-3. Their job is to pick the players and keep the group happy, right? Pick the players and keep the group happy, because you don't get preseasons and tons of work to do with them. I think what you want to do is pick players that are comfortable in the system you're using, and pick players that will be able to go out there in good form and do what you're asking them to do, because it's similar to what they're doing for their club, especially like right now. Look, you're going into a tournament where they've just been playing club football. Don't ask Saka to play wing back. That's not how he's playing right now, right? Don't ask players to, don't pick Maguire. He's not playing right now. That's where a manager, and part of what a manager has to do, you have to have the bravery to say to a player who's held a position for a while, to say, I'm giving it to someone else, because right now that position should be theirs. I think the team that's going to win this World Cup is the team that's able to pick the players that are in the best form for their club right now and put them in a position that's as close to what they do for their club right now. Right? I mean, that's it. Keep them going. Keep them, create that sense of continuity with what they've been doing. As a last thought about the USA, and I think, Lewis, you're the right man to answer this, actually. Could this be the Gio Reyna tournament? This is a player who's been injured so much, but talent-wise, there's no denying that he can provide something really special to a game. There's some of that Bundesliga factor in there, similar to like a Jadon Sancho, but he's got a real burst. He can drive through the midfield in a way that I don't think USA has any other players that can. Tyler Adams, not so much, maybe more of a possession player, but like Gio Reyna could be the guy for the USA. No one knows much about him outside of Dortmund right now, because he hasn't been playing a hell of a lot. Is he fit enough? Is he ready? Is he going to hold up? Can he be the guy that changes the perception of the USA and what the USA can do in the tournament?
The fitness is the big question.
Always,
especially playing 3 games in the space of a week. That's going to be the problem, or the stumbling block. I fear. I would love it for him if he could stay fit, because like the talent, there is no question. As the last couple of years, we've seen Pulisic not really playing that much at Chelsea, and when Gio Reyna has been fit, he has been brilliant for Dortmund. I guess, for anyone who hasn't seen him that much, and for Arsenal fans especially, I'd probably compare his way of playing to someone like Emile Smith-Rowe, just a player who receives the ball and the game accelerates every time he gets the ball. If America can play and play through him, and to have him, Pulisic, and Brendan Aronson in one team, it's not a midfield or the sort of creative positions anyway that anybody is going to fancy coming up against. I don't think those are all 3 players who can turn the game on a dime and make something happen. So they'll bring energy, they'll bring pace, they'll bring dribbling. There's a bit of everything between the 3 of them. And for Reyna, I really, really hope that he can stay fit.
Yeah. Well, I think we should move on from Group A. Group B. A in some of our hearts, but B as far as the World Cup is concerned. Because there's something much, much more important that we have to get to. I know you say, how could something be more important than Group B? How could something be more important than Group B? And it's a fair question. It is. I mean, that feels like the thing that's most important right now. But I would argue that the thing that's most important, and you may disagree, is making sure that your privates are well-shaped. To me, that's the thing that's most important. And look, if you're going to play football in the desert, in the heat, that extra hair, that's not going to suit you. It's not going to suit you. And I'm speaking to two hirsute gentlemen right now. So I think maybe this message is directed to Lewis and Phil, who I suspect could use the most powerful purpose-built trimmer in the world, the Lawnmower 4.0. It's wet, dry, long battery life. It is an astonishing feat of engineering, the way this thing just takes hair off your privates. Share it with your partner. Leave it in the shower. One day you use it, one day they use it. I mean, that's love. That's what love is about. Love is about sharing. And let's face it, when you've had two kids with someone like I have, you're not going to complain about whose hair is on the shower floor or on your tree. It's getting a little weird. It's getting weird. 4000K LED light, long battery life, induction charging, wet, dry. There is also the chance to get the crop preserver, which is their deodorant. There's the toner. There's the boxer briefs. I love their boxer briefs. I use them for working out because they're really nice and comfortable and cozy, and they keep everything right where it's supposed to be. Get 20% off and free shipping worldwide with the code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. That's 20% off, free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code ArsenalVision. And it is the holiday season. It is a season of giving. Be thankful this holiday season for the best gift of all, for Manscaped. Your privates will thank you. Now that we've gotten that silliness out of the way, I do want to mention that this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a service that allows you to get the support and the help you need privately, online, quickly, affordably. You can change therapists if you need to. You can get a specialist if you need to. I've been saying this since we started being sponsored by them. Don't think of therapy as something you do only in a crisis. Think of therapy as something you do to avoid a crisis. A crisis is when you let things build up too much. You don't go to the doctor long enough. Eventually, when you go to the doctor, you're going for a reason that may be more severe than you'd hope. Same is true with therapy, right? You don't want to let things build up. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists, available 100% online, plus it's affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist. It couldn't be simpler. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/vision. That's better, H-E-L-P, betterhelp.com/vision. And last, but I emphasize not least, you need the right talent in your World Cup squad, you call Gareth Southgate. No, you don't. Bad idea. You need the right talent in your business, you call Indeed. And you don't have to call Indeed because they're on the internet. The internet is still around, by the way. I know in the 2000s there were some questions. The internet has made it. It does look like it's going to stick around. Web 3.0, not so sure about that. I need to call FTX about my money. I'm having a hard time getting it out of there. But if you need talent for your business, Indeed is the place where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. I want to emphasize today that Indeed's data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Virtual interviews? Well, if you're going to work virtually, but you don't interview virtually, how are you going to convince your candidates that you're committed to a virtual workplace, to remote work? You can't. Because you're saying, oh, yeah, you can work remote, but you got to come in and interview. That doesn't make any sense. How does it make any sense? It doesn't make sense. You can see the logic. You don't need to install anything. It works right out of your browser. You can message, schedule, and interview top talent all in one place. Indeed can do it all. They know when you're growing your business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why when you sponsor a job, you only pay for quality applications from resumes in the database that match your job description. Indeed is the place to go to start hiring now. Visit Indeed.com/vision. Just go to Indeed.com/vision. Indeed.com/vision. Terms and conditions apply. Cost for not available for everyone. Phil, is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. Okay, let's get on to Group C. And I think it's an interesting one because Argentina and Mexico will certainly be the ones that people expect to get out. Poland can always be a little bit frisky. Is Wojciech Szczesny still there? Indeed, he is. Indeed. Saudi Arabia is there as well. Tell me everything I need to know about Lionel Messi's last stand, last chance to win the World Cup so that people will stop saying Pessi is finished in the comments to every single thing on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and so on.
Well, it is you'd think his last dance. And I think the script, that script, it's ready. It's being written by the football gods. And, it just would be typical, wouldn't it? It would be typical that finally, after all this time, he could finally get his two hands on that wonderful trophy and live up to the prophecy. But I mean, I never know how I feel about Argentina because they've always been very top heavy. They've had Higuain, Aguero in the past, incredible strikers always. But now I don't see them as strong offensively as I do elsewhere in the pitch. I think defensively with Romero, Lisandro Martinez, with Emi Martinez in goal, I think that's a very strong spine. And then they've got good players in midfield, but also Messi is just coming into this tournament in incredible form. He's playing at less than 50%, I would say, in Liga and getting 2 goals and an assist every game. Even in the Champions League, it's just looking very easy for him, and you can feel him charging. You can feel him charging up, and it would. So
similar form to Ronaldo. Oh no. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, he's been great this season as well. I mean,
I don't know. Interview.
I feel it. There's something in the air for Messi, and I feel it because looking forwards, they've got Julian Alvarez up front. There's Joaquin Correa. There's Di Maria, obviously, but I just see him there. And we spoke about Jadon Sancho being the hub. I mean, this is the hub of all hubs in Lionel Messi. And I just think he's ready. He's ready to take over. And it really wouldn't surprise me to see them come out on top. And I mean, for sure, they should be out of this group.
Yeah, I think it's impossible to look past him, Lewis, but there is Mexico in this group. They will cause them problems. A team that they've, encountered before. I wonder with Mexico, they're obviously a team that Americans are familiar with, right? We have quite the rivalry with them. I don't know if they're quite as good as they have been in the past. It's going to be an interesting tournament because I think there's a small chance that Poland could get through here and Mexico could go out early. Maybe that's just my bias showing, but I don't see any problem for Argentina cruising through this group. But is Mexico going to maybe struggle more than we might think? What do you think of the team they're putting together?
Yeah, Mexico always get out of the group. I think it's like the last 7 World Cups in a row. They've got out of the group and then gone out in the round of 16. So, I guess you could comfortably say for the last 30 years or so that Mexico were somewhere between the 9th and 16th best team in the world. And I probably don't see them that high anymore. I think when you're looking at the qualifying as well and you're seeing that Mexico and the US are finishing below Canada, and even qualifying to get to the tournament is looking tighter than it was in the past for both Mexico and America, but for Mexico in particular, I am not convinced. I think Poland, they have Robert Lewandowski, and you sort of just have to keep a clean sheet, and you can bank on him scoring a goal in most of the games he plays. He'll find a chance and he'll probably put it away. So it will be, with Saudi Arabia as the 4th team in that group, with Argentina, who I think if they don't lose the first 2 games, they set a new international record for the longest unbeaten run in history. I think Argentina are obviously the massive favourites. Saudi Arabia are the team that nobody expects to get through. So it's pretty much all going to come down to how Mexico and Poland get on in the game when they play each other. And yeah, it's a coin toss of that when you get to that stage. I think the Mexican team is old, and yeah, it doesn't look great for them, I don't think.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, that group is certainly going to be one where Argentina, Poland, and Mexico, if any of them fail to beat Saudi Arabia, that could be the result that causes them to go out. Saudi Arabia maybe a chance to play spoilers in that group. Group D, Lewis, France, Denmark, Tunisia, and Australia. It sets up for everybody to assume the European teams will get through. I'm curious if you see it that way, but France, not the best news going into a tournament. Obviously, to lose Nkunku, I'm not sure that that's a position where they'll be super concerned, given the immense talent they have. Am I downplaying that? How big a loss is Nkunku to the France team?
I think for the squad, but I don't think for the team it's a massive blow. You've obviously got Benzema. If he's fit, that's the big question, is how fit he's going to be. He's not really played for Real Madrid for the last 6 or 7 weeks. If you don't have him, you've obviously got Olivier Giroud, and you've also obviously got Kylian Mbappe. So there are goals here for France. I think the question really is midfield. They've lost Kante and Pogba, obviously the two who played every single game, with Matuidi as well at the last World Cup, and they won it. None of those players are there. So, Tchouaméni and Camavinga are both at Real Madrid.
Guendouzi?
How ready
are we
going to
see him?
I think we might. Like they're thin. They're really thin in midfield. So those players, how ready are they to step up is the big question, and try and not just have somebody alongside them in midfield. I mean, those two are fantastic, and they've been fantastic for Real Madrid, but they're playing for Real Madrid with Modric and with Kroos. They don't have that at the national team. They possibly won't even have Benzema up ahead of them as well. So my favourites for this group are Denmark. I think Denmark were really, really good. I don't think there was luck involved as they got to the semi-finals.
Did you say your favourites for this group?
Yeah, personally,
wow.
I think Denmark, the Euros, I don't think there was a weakness anywhere in the team. I see goals, I see defensive stability, I see a midfield that will compete with anyone with Højbjerg and Delaney, definitely physically. Christian Eriksen's in great form and obviously missed pretty much the entire Euros, and they deservedly got to the semi-final, and then gave England a real battle in front of 80,000 English fans at Wembley in the semi-final as well. So I think Denmark could spring a few surprises. I think they could go really, really far, and I would probably personally have them to beat France and finish top of the group.
Phil, any disagreement there? I mean, obviously, as someone who doesn't watch as closely, I would still put my money on France. I did watch the Euros and talk about it with you every single day, so I remember the great run Denmark was on, and I remember it sort of spurred on by the tragic scenes with Eriksen on the pitch, and then obviously the great news of him being okay and the comeback he's made. You sometimes wonder, is a tournament about the quality or is it about the momentum, right? And Denmark created some really interesting and exciting momentum in that tournament. Can they repeat that? I mean, I have a hard time looking past France as one of the top favorites to go all the way in this tournament. Do you agree with Lewis that Denmark can shock them here?
Yeah, why not? And I mean, France, they know a thing or two about capitulating, particularly after winning a World Cup, which they did.
Is this a geopolitical statement or what are we doing
last time out? I think Lewis is right. I think Denmark are just so well balanced and strong in all sort of in every department. And I think the good news for both France and Denmark is that Tunisia and Australia are not so strong. I mean, Tunisia will take a bit of breaking down. They were one of the most defensively solid teams in AFCON qualifying or African qualifying. They'll sit in a deep block and look to spring. Australia kind of similar. They'll look to defend and spring when they can through their young forwards. But ideally, you'd think France can top this group. I think midfield, like Lewis said, will be the issue. But going forward and defensively, I just think they have too much strength. But for sure, it's going to be a straight shootout between Denmark. And I know it became kind of a running meme with me backing Turkey for the Euros. But I do have a little something on Denmark.
Nice.
That's
okay.
My intel.
That's the end of Denmark.
I didn't know that was the where I'd pinned my colours as well. That
the Costa curse. The Costa curse returns.
Look,
but embrace it with me, Lewis. Embrace it.
Is it too late to take everything I said back?
One man does the jinxing around here. Please leave that to me. Group E, Lewis, is actually, you know what? I'll start with you, Phil, since you've been getting the second go at it. Let me start with you. Group E is Spain, Germany, Costa Rica, and Japan. And you just immediately say, Spain and Germany. Two teams in transition. Costa Rica, maybe not considered a great team. They've been really difficult in CONCACAF, but that's because it's hard to go to Costa Rica and win. That's a difficult place to play. The pitch ain't great. It's a weird environment, hard place to go win. I don't know that they travel. I don't know that they are going to be able to bring that to the World Cup. Japan, obviously, Tomiyasu, a player we'll be excited to see play. So Spain and Germany, are they in transition enough to have a problem here, or is this still going to be easy work?
Well, first of all, I think this group is just great World Cup heritage. I mean, Costa Rica, great World Cup team. Japan, they're always around with, one or two players that you think, oh God, they're decent, they're good. But I just think, even though they are in transition, obviously the strength and the power of each squad, will eventually tell in the end. But Spain are just a very strange team, because you can't doubt the quality, you can't fault the quality, but on one day they could be brilliant and on the next they could be really underwhelming and just get bullied. But I think there's an exciting kind of young core coming through. Pedri obviously at the center of that. I mean, he's incredible player. Ansu Fati, Ferran Torres, Jeremy Pino. There's a new flavor to this team, and even defensively, no Sergio Ramos, no Gerard Piqué. There's no Thiago in midfield. So this is a new look Spain.
Did he retire or not picked?
Who's that? Sorry,
he for some reason didn't get picked.
Thiago didn't get picked. Interesting.
No. Yeah. Enrique doesn't like him. He prefers Rodri, Koke, those kind of guys.
I mean, I don't think Thiago's at his best anymore, but we saw when we played Liverpool. You put him on the pitch when he's fit, he'll still do some special stuff. But whatever, you do use Spain, all good. Anyway,
yeah, so I'm still expecting Spain to kind of turn up, but I don't find them as convincing as I have done in the last decade. Unfortunately for Costa Rica, I don't see much from them. They've got a few talismans: Keylor Navas, Brian Ruiz. But, the same with Japan. I think they have some talented players around, but maybe they'll just fall short. So Spain and Germany, for me, are the ones that will progress. But, I think Lewis is, again, better placed to talk about Germany.
Yeah, Lewis, I think Germany, one of those teams with players that you might feel better about if they were doing a little something more at their club, in particular, Havertz. Right, Werner. Is Werner even called up? Is Werner part of this squad?
He's injured.
He's injured. Okay, I have to admit I had no idea what's going on with Timo Werner.
Yeah, so I guess the big Germany talking point is the striker crisis, because Timo Werner was the unconvincing answer to the question who's going to play up front, and obviously he's out now. So they've called up. I mean, the one option is to play Kai Havertz or Serge Gnabry up front, and then other than that, they've called up two players who, before their friendly yesterday, were both uncapped. 17-year-old Yusufa Moukoko, who's been starting and scoring goals for Dortmund in the last couple of months. He'll be 18 by the time they play their opener, but yeah, just 17 at the moment. And 29-year-old target man Niklas Füllkrug, who plays for Werder Bremen, who scored on his debut yesterday, came off the bench and scored the only goal in a 1-0 win against Oman. So, yeah, not the most convincing performance to kick things off. Germany are a bit weird. They there's all that obvious talent there. Basically take half the Bayern Munich team, and you've got the bones of the Germany team. But there's no striker. There are no obvious top quality left backs or right backs. So everything starts to get a little bit makeshift around the edges. And I think Hansi Flick wants to play that the way his Bayern Munich played it, high intensity, high pressing, everything at full pace. And I just don't know how much that suits international football with the amount of time you get on the training ground and the gap that you have between matches.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, well, let's speed through a couple more here. And the next one is Group F. Powerhouse Belgium at the end of their run. Canada, a really interesting team that did better in CONCACAF than maybe people expected. Morocco and Croatia. Croatia always a team you're going to look at as long as Modric is still there. They also have Brozovic and Kovacic, so an interesting team. Phil, Belgium's golden generation is just about done. They're going to try to run it back, give it one more chance. I'll never write off any team that has Kevin De Bruyne in it. What's your thought on Belgium's one last run at something with their golden generation?
It's difficult because, I do feel that they are at the end of their cycle. And it's just a normal part of international football, especially because you don't get things like that happening very often. I think Belgium were just extremely lucky to have the players that they did all together. Lukaku, De Bruyne, Vertonghen, Alderweireld, Witsel. That doesn't happen a lot. And I think their time has passed. And I didn't see kind of enough inspiration, enough excitement coming from them at the Euros. I thought they were quite tired in their three at the back formation, with Carrasco playing out wide and just funneling everything through, Lukaku and De Bruyne effectively. They're going into the tournament in shaky form. They're not looking amazing. I think Roberto Martinez is probably going to leave at the end, afterwards. I think he's had his time there. He wants to be back in club football. So, look, I still think they're good enough to top this group or be one of the two that top it. I think Croatia may be in a similar position. I just think how this nation, such a small nation, can produce so much talent is again incredible. Modric, 37 years old, still playing like he's 25. Kovacic, Brozovic in midfield. And they've got some really good young players as well, and Josko Gvardiol, who's going to play at the back. Borna Sosa, again, who can give them some width. So in terms of the group, those two are my favourites. I mean, Canada, what can we say? They topped CONCACAF, top scorers, best defence. Can we count them out? I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah.
Davies running the wing against teams pushing up, and Jonathan David running on the crosses. Yeah, I mean, they could do something.
I just think those three. Morocco, for me, I think that, again, they have some talented players, but I don't see them on the level as the rest. But maybe you never know. It's like you said, momentum is so crucial in tournament football. So, but for me, Belgium and Croatia should be out of here. But I don't know. I've got a little suspicion that Canada could have a shock on their hands, like maybe a result, a win here, draw there, something. But ultimately, they'll fall short in their first World Cup in a very long time.
Yeah, Alphonso Davies is going to have to do something special, I think, for them. But if Belgium and Croatia really push up, and Davies can spring on the counter, and they can hit Jonathan David, running against those aging center backs, you just never know. The game is so slow in international football, and I feel like you don't know if you're going to get one of those tournaments where every game is 1-0, and if that's the case, they certainly can spring an upset. Let's move on, Lewis, to Group G. Brazil, Switzerland, Serbia, Cameroon. I mean, Brazil is going to be in the final, right? Or they're going to win it. That's the expectation every tournament. And I don't see why it should be any different. Neymar, it's so crazy, so polarizing because of his quote-unquote antics and that he went to PSG for the money. But I think it has led people to underrate his talent, which for me has been just under Messi and Ronaldo for this whole Messi-Ronaldo run. And I think people continue to underrate him, and they do so at their peril. Can Brazil be the typical Brazil? And maybe quickly, there's rumors coming out that Martinelli's just been the star of training sessions. I don't think it's going to be enough for him to play much, but will we see any Martinelli and Gabriel Jesus' role? How much can we expect the Arsenal players to contribute to a Brazil run in this tournament?
I hope we see plenty, and I think they're actually two players that Chich will consider when, he knows Gabriel Jesus really well. When he sees more of Martinelli in training, I think he's a player who can kind of force his way into a team with his Tasmanian devil-like approach. It's a whirlwind of action, and it's just hard in those positions. I mean, Richarlison has been playing up front for Brazil, and kind of, he's been playing better than he plays for Tottenham. He plays up front, and and he does all the donkey work, so Neymar can kind of flit around behind and do whatever he wants and go wherever he likes, and Richarlison plugs those gaps. But that's something you can see Gabriel Jesus coming in and doing perfectly as well. So I think, hopefully for all of us, if he gets a chance and gets himself on the score sheet at some point, I can definitely see. We've watched him all season, right? He could play for any team in the world, and especially a team that has Vinicius Junior and Neymar and Rafinha and Martinelli, where maybe the burden isn't on the number 9 to score all the goals. So I think he's got a chance. I think Martinelli is, put it this way, the prospect of somebody having to play for 70 minutes against Rafinha or Vinicius Junior, and then they have to play 20 minutes tired legs against Gabriel Martinelli. He could be an absolute super sub. He could be dynamite coming off the bench, I think, in this tournament against tired defenders. Or maybe in a game where Brazil rotate in the group stage and makes his mark there. So I'm I wouldn't be stunned if neither of them got that much playing time, but at the same time, I wouldn't be stunned if they ended up playing a fair bit and really, really impressing. Like you said, Elliot, Brazil are always one of the favourites for the World Cup. I think this time rightfully. I see them right up there with Argentina myself. I think there's the sort of front four of both teams have the ability to just rip teams apart, and everything behind that is pretty solid. Brazil, I don't know if Fabinho will play because they like the energy of Casemiro and Fred in midfield. It'll be interesting to see if he finds a way to get Fabinho in instead of Fred. It's something that I think most of us would try and do, but we'll see. It's Brazil, obviously the big favourites. I think it's a really, really fun group in total, though. I think Switzerland can cause teams trouble. We saw it at the Euros. I think Serbia are going to be really, really uncomfortable to play against. This huge physical players, Mitrovic and Vlahovic up front together could just bully defenders. And
that's Cameroon. That's going to be interesting to watch how centre backs deal with them.
Well, you are not going to get a moment's rest playing against them two up front. They're going to be hungry as well. Filip Kostic has been one of the world's best wide players for a few seasons now too. So there are players there, and Switzerland too.
Xhaka's in great form.
Granit Xhaka's in great form. He's captain of his country, and Switzerland always do pretty well at international tournaments. So I don't know sort of what the ceiling is for them, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see them go on a bit of a run.
Okay, I think it'll be interesting. Look, obviously, I would love to see Jesus and Martinelli play a role in Brazil having a successful tournament, but I'd also like to see them not play too much. So can we thread that needle? Can someone thread that? I mean, the Switzerland one is tough because I'd love to see Xhaka have a good tournament. He deserves it the way he's playing, and at the same time, he's so important to us right now. And at his age, we just take for granted his durability. I don't know that I want him going deep in the tournament, but then what will it do to him psychologically if it's a disaster tournament? The World Cup is such a tough one to predict in terms of how players will come back from it. All right, Phil, last group here, and then we'll get to a couple quick predictions and players to watch. Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay, South Korea. This is a group that features Thomas Partey, obviously, who I think is the best midfielder in the Premier League at the moment. It features an ever-aging, it seems they're always aging, Uruguay team. A Portugal team that has really, really interesting young talent in it, but has to deal with the headache, maybe now, more a headache than quality of Cristiano Ronaldo. So this is one that I could see. And South Korea, by the way, always seems good in international tournaments. This is one that I think you could throw the names in the air, and the two that land face up are the ones that go through. I don't know if what I just described makes sense, but you get what I'm trying to say. It's a toss-up. That's what I'm trying to say. Phil, is it a toss-up?
Another really fun group, by the way, particularly with the history between Ghana and Uruguay. After what happened in the 2010 World Cup, there's a lot of bad blood and, unresolved feeling there. So I think that's a really interesting subplot in addition to Portugal and Ronaldo. I mean, like you said, he's the top scorer, most appearances, but he's becoming a bit of a liability. And to get him in the team, you have to accommodate him as opposed to having him there, as a pleasure kind of thing. And that's not a good place to be for any manager. And I don't know, for me, there's a big emphasis on the fullbacks in Joao Cancelo, Nuno Mendes, defensive midfielder usually drops in. But for me, I just think they've never been able to get all of their talent working from the same song sheet, singing from the same song sheet. And I've got a feeling that this could be a crash and burn tournament. I don't know why. The feeling around Ronaldo at the moment is not a positive one. And, that for me is a big worry for them. But on the other hand, we were speaking about Belgium's golden generation. I mean, this is Uruguay's very, very, very last chance to get Diego Godin, Edison Cavani, Luis Suarez, they're 100 years old between them, those three alone. But on the other hand, they've also got some good young talent in Federico Valverde, Darwin Nunez. So maybe there is some light at the end of the tunnel about the next generation. But, in general, Ghana's it seems like they're at the start of their next cycle. They're a very young team, the youngest actually in the World Cup, average age of 24.7. Some really good young players. Kudus at Ajax, Kamaldeen at Rennes, Inaki Williams, who everyone knows from La Liga. But they've got 3 dads, Thomas Partey and the Ayew brothers, who I guess will kind of mold that talent. But for me, they're just a bit too young. Same with South Korea. They play some pretty stuff, but Son aside, they don't have too much in the way of firepower. So for me, it's Portugal and Uruguay. But I think in terms of the 2 teams, Uruguay have a big chance to shock Portugal there.
Okay, let's do this. Just enough time for this. 2 players to watch each, just quickly, and then 2 predictions to win it, a sort of favorite one and a dark horse one. So, Lewis, who are your 2 players to potentially be stars of the tournament? They don't have to be unknowns. Just give me 2 players, and then we'll come back for your team predictions.
Jamal Musiala and
Homer.
Darwin Nunez.
Yeah. Nunez is in pretty good form, and while people know I don't think much of him as a footballer all around, I think as a goal scorer, he can be a difference maker, absolutely. Phil, you got 2 players you want us to keep an eye on?
Yes. I mean, we've seen a little bit of him already in the Premier League, but Moises Caicedo, I think he's an excellent player, and I think he's going to be kind of the center of things for Ecuador. I don't know. I've got a good feeling about Yunus Musa as well for this competition. I think he's been really good this season for Valencia, and the States will need something in the middle, and I think he's got it. So those are my 2 players to watch, but we're quite lucky. There's a lot of young, exciting talent in this tournament.
Who's the second one? Musa?
Yeah, Yunus Musa.
Yunus Musa. Okay, I'm just chatting those to you. Let's someone note those down, because we got to keep track of that when they all are out in the group stage. Lewis, your favorite and your dark horse?
Denmark, I've already told you. Yeah. For dark horse, not for my favourites, I guess.
Okay, so who's your dark horse?
That would be a bit too mad. Yeah. My favourites are Argentina.
Argentina. Damn, you took mine. Phil, favorite and a dark horse?
I'm going to go Brazil as the favourites, and just to be a bit different, I'm going to go for Uruguay as the dark horses.
Uruguay, interesting. I will go... So I got to pick something different. I can't pick ones you guys have picked.
You're the boss.
Pick whatever you like.
Well, because I kind of had a little thing for Argentina. One thing I think Lionel Messi is obviously hugely popular all over the world. But I think in an area of the world where I don't think there'll be a team that I don't think Qatar will go very far, so they'll have to adopt someone. I could see them adopting Messi, right? And adopting that team, and so there could be sort of a home crowd environment when they play. So I think Argentina, but what the hell? I'll go with Brazil as a favorite since no one picked them. And as a dark horse, I mean,
I picked Brazil.
Oh wait, yeah, you. Sorry, that's my bad. My bad. So, well, you have me going one way. I'm scrolling through the list of teams. I mean, I wanted to pick Argentina, but they're already taken. Well, fine. I'll go with France as the favorite. And as a dark horse, oh boy, that is a tough one, because I think the ones that I was interested in have been picked through. But as a dark horse, I will go with the Netherlands. Is that dark horsey enough?
I'd say so.
Yeah, they went in the last one, so
yeah, that's true. Has someone jotted all this down?
We'll get it down. We'll get it down.
All right. You guys jot it down. I've done my work for the day, which is listen to you talk. Okay, let's leave it there. We will go daily starting Monday. So starting Monday, we will go daily. Now, my plan is to still have Arsenal Vision podcast probably on Mondays, probably not the Thursday one, because I just don't think there's going to be enough. But if there's news, we'll certainly do Arsenal Vision pods, and we'll cover the Arsenal stuff. We'll talk rumors, and we'll talk Arsenal players at the World Cup. But the dailies will probably be about 30 minutes long. We'll try to hit the headlines of the day, the stock rising of the day, stock falling of the day. Probably follow a similar path to the instant reaction pods that we do on Patreon. So look out tomorrow. We're going to do Mudryk and Danilo's scouting video tomorrow on Patreon. You don't want to miss that. Okay, Lewis is on Twitter at LG Ambrose. Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you, Elliot.
Phil is on Twitter at Phil Costa. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. I'm ready to kiss my social life away for the next month. So
yeah, that's the whole plan. Yeah,
I'm ready.
I do appreciate your intellect, your knowledge. One thing that I think you know about the Arsenal Vision podcast is that we really try to bring the sincerity and the honesty as well. So I would appreciate you not pretending you had a social life before the World Cup. Just, as a thought there.
Whoa.
Anyway, just kidding.
Oh, That's a shocker. That's a shocker.
Says the guy who like cleans dirty diapers and plays with a 7-year-old. Is my social life. So there you go. Okay, my name is Elliot Smith. Please do block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. To the extent that Twitter is still around. It's still around for the time being. I think it still loads. I think it still runs. Thank you so much for being here. We love you so much. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. Whether or not we wish this was going on, we're going to make it fun. So join us for the journey. Join us for the journey. And with that, join us for the, if nothing more, the 80s synth music, because it's real, real good. We love you. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, your team 0. No, wait, no. Rewind. We will talk to you after your country 10, other country 0.